we've got Mohammad Tasnime Akunjee coming on. How are you doing?
I'm well. Morning. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming. And we've also got Tim Crossland from Defend Our Juries.
Yeah, good
How you
morning,
doing, Tim?
Crispin. Yeah, good, thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
There's a lot of things to unpack in the next 25 minutes or so, but I'll just start with what's happened in the past week that has alarmed people. Is in particular this incident that I'm just going to play.
What's your intention here today?
My intention is to wave this flag and keep Palestine in the public consciousness right now.
So do you support any prescribed group?
I do not support any prescribed group.
Okay.
I support a free Palestine and the end of genocide.
The way that you're behaving at the moment would lead me to believe that you may be. Give me suspicion
What?
of grounds to believe you could be.
What suspicion? That I've got a sign that says Free Gaza, holding a Palestinian flag, and I have a sign that says Israel is committing genocide.
Yeah. My colleagues explained that the support of this, mentioning freedom of Gaza, Israel genocide, all of that, all will come under prescribed groups, which are terror groups that have been dictated by the government, all right, which we have suspicion to suggest that you're supporting, based on your actions here in a city with the flags and the posters you've got up, right? If you don't provide us with your name and address, those are necessities for us to arrest you for offences against the Terrorism Act for being part of a prescribed group. Express an opinion or belief that is supportive of a prescribed organisation. Now that you have done.
But that's ridiculous. You could end up arresting half the country
I didn't
for
make
that.
the legislation. If you're found down the high street later on, you'll probably find yourself arrestable for that offence. Because you've been warned not to.
So I can never do this again in Canterbury, in Kent.
It's an offence.
But now I can never hold this in public ever again.
Holding a flag, if you had just a flag, we'd probably say, be careful what you do.
Free Gaza?
Free Gaza, which is supportive
What
of
about
Palestine
that?
Action, and a sign of Israel committing genocide would be in line with...
What you're doing is giving us suspicion. We only need 2 out of 10 to give us suspicion that you support a Palestinian.
Amazing.
Now that was alarming enough, but then this is a follow-up. This is a statement from the local police there in Kent. The Kent police spokesperson said, under the Terrorism Act, it is a criminal offence to carry or display items that may arouse with reasonable suspicion that an individual is a member or supporter of a prescribed organisation such as Palestine Action. Now, the reasonable suspicion is the issue there, I think. What do you make of that, Mohammad Akunjee? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think, that Suella Braverman's wet dream come manifestly true, isn't it, really? At the very beginning of all of this, October 7th, Braverman was writing letters to the police to suggest that the phrase "from the river to the sea" is a genocidal phrase, and supportive of terrorism, and simply waving the Palestinian flag is a terrorist sort of action. Now, that was completely untrue, and it remains untrue. The issue with the police officer saying raising suspicion, that's completely wrong. The individual can only be said to be raising suspicion that he's supportive of a state called Palestine, and can only be said that he's supportive of standing opposed to genocide in Gaza. Now, they may be the objects or the of what Palestine Action hope to achieve. That is the object, but the law does not stop anyone from showing support for the object of any organisation. It stops you supporting the organisation. So, it could well be that, and it should be said, that the ICJ is an organisation that stands opposed to genocide and stands opposed to the genocide in Gaza and the West Bank and what have you. But nobody and no police officer would dare to suggest that if somebody said that they support the International Court in its position against genocide in Gaza, that is in any way supportive of a prescribed organisation. The objects of the organisation are separate and not affected by the law. It's the organisation itself, or support of the organisation itself, that is now prescribed, controversially now prescribed.
Right. I mean, there is another example this week that I found disturbing on this, which I'll just show this one. This is from this is in Glasgow.
Where else in the world would you find senior officials marching in support of the rape of Palestinian prisoners? It's an outrage, this man.
Why are you arresting him?
Let him go! Let him go!
Let him go! Let him go! Let him go! Let him go!
Let him go!
Let him go!
The police are now arresting a man for holding a sign that said genocide in Palestine.
Look at this.
Time to take action.
This is a bloody nonsense.
It's absolute outrage. It's a scandal. This is an arrest of somebody standing up to genocide. This is an arrest to allow the genocide to continue to its completion. This is a scandal.
Sean, you brought the terrorists. The British state is terrorists.
Can somebody find out what
Is there a defence force of terrorists?
What police station is he going to?
Now, just to show how these arrests that people are seeing on social media have had an impact on people. This is from the survey that I put out this week, and it's quite clear that people are uncertain about their rights here. Do you believe that UK terrorism laws are being used fairly and appropriately? No, 92.6%. This is over 800 people who subscribe to the channel. How confident are you that you understand your legal rights if arrested under terrorism laws? Only 1% are extremely confident and only 1.2% are very confident. Most people are not so confident or not at all confident. Are you concerned that peaceful protest or political expression could lead to a terrorism-related arrest? Nearly 80% are very concerned, 18% somewhat concerned. Very few are not concerned at all. Do you believe police officers understand and fairly apply the Terrorism Act when dealing with protesters? Yes, 0.5%. No, 83.9%. And would you know what to say or do if stopped by police and questioned under terrorism laws? No, 60%. You can see there that what's happened with those incidents and other things has really put people in a lot of fear. Tim, I'm just, what would you say about the fear that people have now? Is it justified?
It's understandable, isn't it, that people are fearful when you can get arrested under terrorism laws for opposing genocide on a simple cardboard sign. I mean, that's understandable. It's nightmarish, isn't it? It's Orwellian. It's Kafka, whatever. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But if we allowed that fear to, determine what we do, we are right on the pathway to fascism. I mean, we're already on the pathway to fascism, aren't we? But we're heading there fast. And so that is why what we're saying, the only way to respond to this is to come together. Because if we come together in our numbers, then we are powerful again, then we're strong again, then we can face down and expose the absurdity of this law. And then we're laughing at it instead of being afraid of it and cowering before it. So that is right now the only choice that we've got.
Yeah. Well, look, I when you say laugh at it, I mean, I think your arrest was one of the most outstanding arrests I've ever seen. In your response to it, I couldn't. I just like to show people what happened.
Well, this is what happens in modern day Britain for opposing genocide. It's quite something, isn't it? I mean, this is why the laws came in after 1945. The European Convention on Human Rights was to stop a genocide happening again. And now it's happening. I don't know. People have got short memories.
You want to go up next?
The mother of all democracies, people.
And you're not the only person that's been doing this. There's been a lot of arrests over the past couple of weeks, haven't there?
Yes. Well, I think in the whole of 2024, there were 248 arrests under the Terrorism Act. Since the prescription of Palestine Action came in on the 5th of July, so that's 2 weeks ago now, there have been more than 200 arrests already just for people holding signs saying, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action. So it's, completely transforming an arrest that at one point would have been, pretty traumatic for people. People are now starting to see it as a badge of honor. Now starting to see this will be the mark that I stood up against genocide, that I refused to be complicit in genocide. This will be the mark, my arrest for terrorism, that I stood firm for our basic democratic freedoms. And I know this might sound a bit crazy, but we got so many people wanting to do this now. It's hard to, we're struggling to manage with the numbers, because it's really important people do understand the legal risks before they take action. So we ask everybody to come to a legal briefing before they do, to read a detailed legal document we put together, to come to a Zoom call. And there's hundreds and hundreds of people coming to those calls. I don't want to be flippant about it, because it is a significant thing to be arrested under the Terrorism Act, but we've got people queuing up to do this. And ultimately, if enough people do it, this law is not sustainable. It'll be like the poll tax riots. Every law only survives with a certain element of social compliance. And if we do not comply, the law is going to have to go. So that has got to be our objective. And in that sense, I think Yvette Cooper has got this, politically horribly wrong. She's left herself and her government completely exposed, because she's given us the power now to come together and to take a really meaningful, determined stand against this government's horrific complicity in genocide.
Yeah. Now, can I come back to you, Mohammed, on this? There's tomorrow I think it's at the Royal Courts of Justice. There's the appeal effectively on the prescription. What do you think the chances are that they'll see sense? I mean, what's happened in the past week should be enough evidence to show that this isn't workable.
Well, I mean, I think the UK government has shown its position and its quote unquote respect for the general public by continuing to arm and abet a genocide in Israel, which is completely against UK law and against international law and against the feeling of 74% of the British public. And they've continued to do so despite massive opposition by the public all of this time. The prescription of PAL action is part of that strategy to keep supporting Israel and stymieing dissent against the stream of public opinion at the moment. So I don't really think, in my view, that anything's going to change on the 21st, unfortunately, because this is entirely a political decision and not one that is the fair and impartial application of law to the facts. And I think that's why we've got such strength of feeling around it, because it's so transparent that that's actually what the case is, that the law and the criminal law that's meant to be one of the main protections for society to try and dissuade people from engaging in behaviour that's harmful to society and to put force of arms behind that if people do. That force of arms, that protection has been used to cudgel society, to change its mind, to quiet it down, in the same way that North Korea, as the government complains, does, or they argue about Putin doing so and what have you. And we're no different to that. In fact, we're more transparently so now to these accusations. You'll see someone like, Hussein Shafi last week, a guy who has a broken back, is in actual danger of being paralysed, made the effort to go to Scotland Yard and read out a statement in front of Scotland Yard supporting Palestine Action with the intent of being arrested. Now, interestingly, the police there eventually conceded he wants to be arrested under Section 12, support of support of a prescribed organisation.
Yeah, we're going to talk to him later, by the way.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'll let him explain then.
Let him have the bit in the limelight there. But I'm aware of the time here, and there's a lot of people responding to that survey concerned, as you could see from the results, not knowing what their rights are. What would you recommend on if
right
they get
now,
arrested for terrorism?
Right now, everyone in this country, the 67 million people in this country, can answer that question. It's an age-old question. What would I have done in Nazi Germany, right, if I was there? And right now, you can answer that question because we're there, right? We are at the foot. No, we're not at the foothills of fascism. We're halfway up to the peak at the moment, and right now is where civil disobedience is the only line left to protect your rights, because the law is being manipulated against the people. There's no election coming up anytime soon.
But I mean, how would someone? I mean, for example, someone with family, they're worried about if their job, if they get arrested. What would you recommend that they do if the police say they're charging them with terrorism, like what happened in Canterbury?
So, at the very outset, I'd say don't speak to the police at all. When they're asking you questions on site, you just simply don't answer. If you're arrested, that is the risk of living under a fascist dictatorship, is that when you oppose it, the dictatorship will come for you, really. And previously that was, these pressure groups, and they would contact your boss and try and get a regulator and try and get you fired. And now, because that's not working, they've now gone straight to the law. Now, if you want to protest, and if you want to stand opposed to this, you run the risk of being arrested, you run the risk of having a criminal record, you run the risk of losing your job, and going to prison. Like these powers are very, very harsh. They're draconian. Merely mouthing support for a terrorist organisation can get you a maximum sentence of 14 years. So words and display of words, are more serious than most in terms of sentencing, most violent crime now. Right? So the issue is if you are going to protest, do it with your eyes wide open, get legal advice, know the risks and consequences of that, and prepare yourself for that, because civil disobedience has a consequence to you personally, and it wouldn't mean anything if it didn't. Standing up for principles means nothing if there's no consequence to that. But if you are going to risk that, then do so with full knowledge, and do it with your full chest.
People are saying, what is it? What should we say anything? Can we say no comment?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you have every right not to comment. There's only one exception to that, which is if you're detained under Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act, and that only happens in an international port, so it's an airport or what have you. But if you're on UK territory, you're not anywhere near a port, you have absolutely the right to say nothing. You have the right to a solicitor, and you should exercise that right, having said nothing to the police, so that you preserve your ability to potentially sue them for wrongful arrest and false imprisonment later on.
And with getting a solicitor, should they take the solicitor the police suggest, or should they people be prepared with their own solicitor?
I think people should do their research first to try and find out which firms have some specialist experience in terrorism laws. But if they haven't done so and they get arrested, just ask for the local solicitor, duty solicitor, and still say nothing, really, because at least you'll have a lawyer there protecting your rights, and they'll be noting down exactly what the police officers have said, what they've done, and they'll be preserving that questioning as well. That doesn't necessarily all happen on tape, and that will be for your benefit. So a solicitor is better than no solicitor, and an experienced solicitor is better than an inexperienced solicitor.
Okay. Well, look, Tim, I'm interested to hear, because obviously you've looked at the legal basis of your protest. What would you say about, you're being picked up with a sign? I mean, this guy in Scotland had a sign that just had those words, but they weren't even next to each other. What do you think the chances are of them actually charging you with terrorism?
Well, so far nobody's been charged. We've had 200 arrests. and nobody's been charged. I think there was a charge in Scotland, but that's a slightly different system. And in terms of the chances of being charged, well, that depends on what everyone decides to do now. There's safety in numbers, and what we're inviting people to join us in is a mass event on the 9th of August, Saturday the 9th of August. The action will only proceed if 500, a minimum of 500 people commit to taking part. 500 people upholding the same signs on the same day in the same police force area will put a huge pressure on the state, because the practicalities of having to arrest, charge and prosecute 500 people with the criminal justice system in crisis, with even mainstream media like the BBC and the Times coming out against the prescription, quizzing Laura Koonsberg, quizzing the Met Commissioner, going, is this really what we want to be using public resources on? Arresting 83-year-old women priests for holding up a sign in opposition to genocide. If enough people do this, then just through that collective power, I think the chances of charges, and the chances of charges under Section 12, which requires a Crown Court and a jury to be impanelled, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So the best antidote, the best protection here is for people to come together. None of that is questioning that you want a good lawyer if you get interviewed. We will help with all of that. We've got lawyers lined up for the interview process. It's best not to have a duty solicitor. We've got lots of advice for people about how to prepare for arrest, but safety in numbers is the key here. So please, everybody on this call who feels moved to take action, feels moved to do something to resist this government's complicity in genocide, put the 9th of August in your diary.
Right. Now, just I'm curious on this. By talking to you as Defend Our Juries, I'm not endorsing Palestine Action, because you're doing a protest about civil rights more than an endorsement of anyone, aren't you?
I would ask you, Chris, but do not be afraid about this. It is completely lawful to campaign for deprescription of an organisation, to lift the ban. There's a statutory mechanism in the Terrorism Act to apply to deprescribe a prescribed organisation. And the Defend Our Juries campaign, you can read all about it on our website. defendourjuries.org is a campaign to lift the ban. And by bringing people together onto the streets, what we're trying to do is something deeply democratic. It's to expose the absurdity of this law, to expose the disproportionate interference in our right to freedom of expression, to peaceful assembly. We say this is a lawful thing to do, and we're confident ultimately, if not the UK court, Strasbourg will rule in our favour on this. But all you are doing, Crispin, I think is a very democratic thing. You're giving airtime for people talking about a campaign to deprescribe Palestine Action and to restore some sanity and respect for human rights.
And right, okay, right, I'll sleep well tonight. Mohammed, what's your take on the fact that there might be too many people for the justice system to cope with? What do you think that there is a number that would be too much for it?
I think there's too few politicians arrested at the moment. So we've got space for that in the justice system, I'd hope. But in terms of where we are in general numbers, you have the Ministry of Justice floating ideas about taking away the right to juries for an even greater swathe of offences, because our criminal justice system, even before this, was creaking under the weight of that, to the point where we've got trials that are now going off for 2 years before they're being heard. And these are very, even sensitive trials like rape and involving children and things. So our criminal justice system hasn't been funded at all properly for decades. The idea that we've got all the money and the space in the world for hundreds upon hundreds of arrests, and most of the offences under the Terrorism Act, the vast majority, would either be by necessity in front of a jury because it's an indictable only offence, or if not, they're at least either way offences, which means that the individual, if they're charged, has the right to be seen in the Crown Court in front of a jury. From experience, I would say I'd be very surprised if if even a tiny fraction of the people who've been arrested are convicted by a jury of their peers. Because at the very outset, every single one of these people are saying that they stand opposed to the proscription of Palestine Action, and Palestine Action had to be proscribed because it broke the Terrorism Act. But the part of the Terrorism Act that Home Secretary relied on was to say that terrorism is also damage to property. And actually most, Brits know what terrorism is. It's violence or the threat of violence for political ends. And property just simply doesn't fall within that as a definition. It's been expanded. The idea of terrorism has been expanded into a complete fiction now, as a legal device to be a catch-all for anything that you find. But I mean, affecting health and safety also falls within the definition of the Terrorism Act. So you can imagine that somebody who removes a slippery when wet sign outside of a court or outside of Parliament or something may well fall within the definition of being a terrorist if they intended to be political about it. So it's gone to the absurd.
Now look, there's people asking more questions. I need to get these in before they'll shout at me afterwards. Do you have to give your name and address when
you don't have to give anything to a police officer? You may be detained in order for them to ascertain your name and address, but I would certainly say, as a very simple message, do not speak to the police at all. If you are arrested, the only thing you need to tell them is that you want a solicitor. Brilliant.
I think that's a pretty simple thing. It takes all the weight off anyone worrying about anything. Just get a solicitor. So do you want to just finish, Tim, by anything you want to say to add to what's been said?
I just think each one of us has got a choice at the moment, haven't we, about whether to step into fear or step into courage. And we know the significance of that individual choice, each one of us. If we step into fear and become, petrified about what we say, we are helping that collapse into fascism by being, promoting that fearfulness. Each one of us who decides this is the moment for courage, for collective action, we're resisting that. So it's a choice each of us has to make. Please, have a look at the materials we've got about the 9th of August, because that's the way you confront that choice.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.